I said the DJI Osmo 360 II had just made the Insta360 X6 look expensive. That video got a lot of attention, and after reading through your comments, I realized something. The real decision between these two cameras is actually much more complicated than $499 versus $700. Because some of you immediately said, DJI, take my money. Others said there is absolutely no reason to spend $700 when the X5 is already good enough. But then another group made a very good point. Specifications aren't everything. Insta360 has years of experience with 360 software, a huge accessory ecosystem, and for someone who already owns an X series camera, switching brands might actually cost more than it initially appears. So instead of doing another spec-for-spec comparison, let's answer a much more useful question. Now that both cameras are official, which one should you actually buy? And surprisingly, I don't think there's one answer for everyone. Let's get the obvious thing out of the way first. On paper, DJI has created an extremely aggressive package. The Osmo 360 II gives you 8K at 60 frames per second, 10-bit color, D-Log-M, replaceable lenses, AI Super Night 2.0, 120 megapixel panoramic photos with RAW support, 4K 240 slow motion, more than 100 gigabytes of usable internal storage, and up to 14.5 stops of claimed dynamic range under DJI's test conditions. The launch price in Hong Kong converts to roughly $499 for the standard package. Meanwhile, the Insta360 X6 officially starts at $699.99 in the US. So yes, if you put the two cameras beside each other and simply compare headline specifications with price, DJI looks like the better deal. And judging from your comments, a lot of people reached exactly that conclusion. I saw people saying their money was going to DJI, people saying the X6 price was cooked, and even longtime Insta360 owners saying this price increase was making them consider switching brands. One viewer who said they'd been with Insta360 since the X2 was seriously considering jumping ship. That is important because these aren't necessarily people who dislike Insta360. Some are existing customers who simply feel that $700 has pushed the X series into a different category. But here's where I think we need to be careful. The difference between 8K 50 on the X6 and 8K 60 on DJI sounds important when you're reading a specification sheet. In actual use, it may mean almost nothing to some creators. One of you made exactly that point in the comments if you're normally shooting 24, 25, 48, or 50 frames per second. Getting 60 instead of 50 isn't necessarily going to change your workflow. That's why I don't think anyone should choose between these cameras simply because one says 8K 60 and the other says 8K 50. The X6's actual imaging upgrades are much more interesting than that number. It uses custom 1.1 square sensors, which Insta360 says provide about 33% more sensor area than the X5. Independent testing so far has generally been very positive about its image quality and particularly its low light performance. You also get 10-bit color iLog, Dolby Vision, 120 megapixel 360 photos, and Insta360's pure video processing. So while $700 is expensive, this isn't just an X5 with a new body and a slightly higher frame rate. At the same time, that leads directly into probably the most interesting question from the comments: what if you already own an X5? This might actually be a more important comparison than X6 versus Osmo 360 II. Several of you basically said my X5 is already good enough. And I completely understand that position. The X5 already records 8K 360 video, it already has replaceable lenses, its stabilization is excellent, the image quality is very good, and you're already inside Insta360's ecosystem. The X6 improves almost everything: larger sensors, better low light, higher frame rates, 10-bit recording, more durable lenses, better waterproofing, improved battery life, and more advanced processing. Independent comparisons have found those improvements to be real. But real improvement doesn't automatically mean everyone needs to upgrade. If you're shooting professionally, frequently working in difficult lighting, want 10-bit color, or simply want the best Insta360 X series camera available, the X6 makes sense. But if you're mostly shooting vacations, cycling, motorcycles, skiing, or occasional 360 content in good daylight, your X5 hasn't suddenly become a bad camera because the X6 exists. And there's another factor that people often forget when discussing price: accessories. Let's say you've been using Insta360 cameras for several generations. You might already own selfie sticks, mounts, clamps, motorcycle accessories, chest mounts, tripods, and other pieces of equipment. One of the comments under the previous video specifically pointed this out. If you switch to DJI and need to rebuild part of that setup, suddenly that apparent $200 saving becomes smaller. That doesn't mean every Insta360 accessory becomes useless or that DJI has no ecosystem of its own. DJI has been building out the Osmo accessory family aggressively. The point is simply that the cheapest camera isn't always the cheapest system, and software might be the biggest reason some people should still choose Insta360. This came up repeatedly in the comments, and I think it's something we didn't emphasize enough in the previous video. Insta360 has spent years refining a workflow built specifically around 360 footage. The camera is only half of the experience. You still have to take this giant spherical video, find the interesting part, reframe it, track subjects, create camera movements, and eventually turn it into something people can watch on a normal screen. The X6 pushes that advantage even further with Panamind, AI Director, Auto Edit, and the broader zero editing concept. The idea is that instead of coming home with hours of 360 footage and manually searching through everything, the software can identify highlights and start creating usable clips for you. And independent reviews are still identifying ease of editing as one of the X6's strengths. Now, that doesn't mean everything is perfect. One recent review noted app crashes and limitations on some devices, while another found the editing capabilities excellent, but described parts of the newer workflow as somewhat clunky. So better ecosystem shouldn't be interpreted as perfect software. DJI isn't ignoring software either. Spotlight Follow on the Osmo 362 can automatically track your subject and let you export a subject-tracked flat 4K video. DJI Studio and Mimo cover the basic reframing and editing workflow as well. But Insta360 has been living in this category for much longer, and right now I still think software is one of the strongest arguments for paying more for the X6. And this brings us to something that became very obvious in your comments. There are two different kinds of 360 camera buyers. The first person loves editing. They shoot log, manually reframe shots, use Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve, color grade footage, and want maximum control. The second person bought a 360 camera specifically because they don't want to think about framing while recording. They want to press record, enjoy whatever they're doing, and deal with the video later as quickly as possible. Ironically, Insta360 has a strong argument for both. The X6 now offers iLog and 10-bit recording for serious workflows, while its AI tools are simultaneously trying to make editing easier for casual users. That's a big part of what you're paying for. DJI's argument is different. How much are those conveniences worth to you? Because if the Osmo 362 produces image quality that is extremely close or potentially better in certain situations, while costing substantially less in markets where it's officially available, then suddenly you're effectively being asked to put a dollar value on Insta360's software advantage. And we haven't even discussed one of the biggest practical advantages DJI has: storage. The Osmo 362 has 128 GB built in, with roughly 105 GB usable. The X6 has around 47 GB usable internal storage. Both support expandable storage, so neither is fundamentally limited by this, but having more than twice as much usable internal memory is extremely useful when you forget your micro SD card or fill it during a shoot. Then there's battery life. Insta360 claims up to 140 minutes at 8K 30, and battery performance has been one of the positively received aspects of early reviews. DJI rates the Osmo 360 II at around 100 minutes of continuous 8K 30 recording under its specified laboratory conditions. So this is an area where looking only at price doesn't tell the whole story. The X6 is also waterproof to 20 meters without an additional housing, while DJI rates the Osmo 360 II to 10 meters. If you're regularly around water, diving, surfing, or doing other activities where that matters, that's not a small specification. And then we arrive at the biggest complication of this entire video. If you're watching from the United States, a lot of what I've just said about DJI's value becomes theoretical. The Osmo 360 II launched in China, and an official US sale date remains unconfirmed. That exact frustration showed up throughout the comments on our previous video. People were basically saying, I'd buy the DJI, but I can't. Others were talking about importing it, while some said they would simply buy the X6 because they wanted something officially available and supported where they live. And I think that's important because I saw people treating the $499 versus $700 comparison as though both cameras are sitting next to each other on a Best Buy shelf in America. They're not. If you import the DJI, you may pay more than the converted Chinese or Hong Kong price. Shipping, reseller margins, taxes, and warranty considerations can change the equation. Once that happens, the apparent $200 difference can shrink considerably. Outside the United States, though, things become much more interesting if DJI gives the Osmo 360 II a broader international rollout at similarly aggressive regional pricing. So, after reading all of your comments and looking at the first independent X6 reviews, here's how I would make the decision. If you already own an X5 and you're happy with it, keep it. Unless you specifically need the larger sensors, better low light, 10-bit workflow, higher frame rates, or other X6 upgrades, you don't suddenly need to spend $700. If you're buying your first premium 360 camera, and both cameras are officially available in your country at anything close to the current price difference. The Osmo 360 II looks like the better value. You're getting extremely competitive hardware, replaceable lenses, huge internal storage, and 8K 60 while keeping a substantial amount of money in your pocket. But if you already have a large Insta360 setup, value its editing ecosystem, want the stronger current battery and waterproofing claims, or simply want a camera officially available in the United States right now, the X6 starts making much more sense. And that's why I wouldn't call either camera the universal winner. The previous video was essentially asking whether the X6 could justify costing around $200 more. After reading your responses, I think that's actually the wrong question. The question should be, what does that extra money buy you? If the answer is better integration with accessories you already own, a mature editing ecosystem, AI tools that save you hours, stronger battery endurance, deeper waterproofing, and official local availability, then paying more isn't necessarily a bad decision. But if you primarily care about capturing high-quality 360 footage and you're comfortable doing the editing yourself, DJI's price becomes incredibly difficult to ignore. And perhaps the most interesting result of all this is what happens to the X5, because at the right discounted price, an X5 might actually be the smartest purchase for a huge number of people. You don't necessarily need either of these new cameras, so I'm going to turn the question back to you, because your comments completely changed the direction of this follow-up. If you had $700 today, would you buy the X6, buy the Osmo 360 II and keep the difference, or save even more money and pick up an X5? And if you already own one of these cameras, tell everyone why you're staying with it or why you're switching. That discussion might be more useful than any specification sheet I can show you.